Well, our first three-game match week in a championship season comes to a conclusion this weekend before the October international break. And as always, we're going to look ahead to all 12 matches across Friday, Saturday and Sunday, preview them, predict the scores, and hopefully get a few more right than we did in midweek. If you guys want to get involved in the comments as well as always, then do give us your score predictions for all 12 matches. And if you beat or match my overall score, you'll get a shout out in the next recap in 2 weeks' time, when we return for match week 10 after the international break. For now though, before we move on to the 9th match day, we need to have a little look back at what happened in midweek, because match week 8 saw the end of my good form over the last couple of weeks. Unfortunately for me, just 4 points, a few near misses, and to be fair, a few shocks that pretty much none of us got right. Just looking through the scores earlier, nobody got more than half of the outcomes right this midweek. It was all about who got the perfect scores. Unfortunately for me, there were none, though I did get correct outcomes for Burnley, Sunderland, Sheffield United, and the final draw between Bristol City and Sheffield Wednesday for 4 points overall. That puts me near the bottom of the tree, but it was not a high scoring week. If we have a look at what you guys did, and you're going to have to bear with me and the background sound, because we're back to pen and paper today. Level with me on 4, we've got Nigel, Mello and this guy, 3 of the regulars. On 5, Akshay, Brian and Ojo, but Ojo did get a perfect score. On 6, Steve with no perfect scores, but Swifty and Etienne with 1 apiece. On 7, it was Mitchell, again with 1 perfect score. On 8, we've got Paul and Tony with 2 perfect scores and Darren with 1. And then on 9, joint second place this week, only 1 person in double figures. We've got Teo, David B and Gordon, who all got 2 perfect scores. But top of the tree, and I told you it was the story, didn't I? Bobby, 11 points, 3 perfect scores, and that made all the difference. Only 5 correct outcomes. You only need 5 when you're getting all the scores right. Excellent effort from you, the solitary player in double figures this midweek. Let's hope it's a little better for all of us in match week 9 as we move ahead to the weekend action. And we start with a bit of a blockbuster game at the top on Friday night. It is Sunderland versus Leeds United in the North East. Sunderland, one of the few sides not to have drawn a game yet this year. Leeds United, probably only not top because they've been frustrated to draws in a couple of matches. If we go back to midweek though, Sunderland recovered in style. A good 2-0 win at home to Derby. They look really imperious at home, look solid defensively. Still playing that sort of way that they did previously. They didn't absolutely dominate the ball against Derby. They didn't actually have that many chances. Derby had a lot of counters, a lot of corners, but Sunderland got the job done. Joe Bellingham getting that crucial goal just before the break, and to add one again before the hour mark just did enough. And look, Sunderland have been efficient this year, and that's a great word to be at this stage of the season. For Leeds United, they made it 3 unbeaten, albeit a little frustrated with a 1-1 draw away at Norwich, conceded the early penalty, but got back on terms after the break and were by far the better team for the most part. Norwich's only shot on target was that penalty, but Leeds, it's the same old story. We've mentioned it a lot, and let's be fair, this isn't exclusive to Leeds. There's probably 6 to 8 teams in the Championship who would expect to be up there this season, but just can't hit the back of the net with their chances. You've got your Borough. My club, Luton, have fallen foul of that a few times as well, and Leeds United proving so again here. But overall, a decent point against the Norwich side that are normally strong at home, and they're pushing right back up the table. For me, still the favourites overall. But it does make this game a very tough one to call because they've been absolutely magnificent, Sunderland at home. They're really hard to beat. They're also the top scorers in the division, so you know if they get chances, they're probably going to take them. And it's about whether Leeds can do the same. I feel like a lot of people are going to be going for Sunderland here, and it sort of plays with your mind, doesn't it? Because now I'm thinking, well, because there were a few shocks in midweek, do we put surprise scorelines in? And I'm going to do so maybe from the start. At the start of the season, this scoreline wouldn't be a surprise. I'm going to go for Leeds to nick it by 2-1, mainly because I don't want to sit on the fence with loads of Championship's favourite scorelines. So 1 apiece at the Stadium of Light. I am really looking forward to watching this game. Hopefully you guys are too. And hopefully it doesn't disappoint. As we move on to Saturday lunchtime and a game that you may call a bit of a home banker at the start. Or do you after midweek? It's Burnley versus Preston North End. Preston produced a very good win against Watford, a 3-0 victory, albeit there is some caution that has to be exercised here because while Preston created more great opportunities than they have done all season, and there were signs that in an attacking sense, they're starting to build patterns of play and come together, they should have still been behind. It was a poor finish by the Watford player one-on-one. Preston gave up a couple of good chances, made some mistakes at the back. And in the end, this game could have been like 4-2, 5-3. It wouldn't have flattered either side. It was a very open match, which was unexpected. As Magic getting a brace, when he focuses on the football, it turns out he's a very good player. And he's the sort of player that can go on little streaks, getting 2s and 3s. So definitely positive signs for Preston. For Burnley, I stick by what I said about Sunderland. Efficient at this stage of the season. Not really blowing teams away, even when the scoreline suggests they have. But they're solid at the back. They've only let in 4 goals all year so far. And they're finding a way to win. They restricted Plymouth to next to nothing. Not that they came and showed much ambition against them. But they went 1-0 up and they didn't really look in much doubt for the most part. It's another one a bit like Pompey before. A bit like getting that point against Oxford and that smash and grab at Leeds. Just getting the job done and picking up points. Which, very similar to last time they went up. If you remember on the company, first half of the season was about half wins, half draws. And then they just went on a winning streak. So I think there's positive signs there at Turf Moor. I'm going to go for them to nick this one. I think Preston will set up a bit more cautiously here. I think it will be a lower scoring game. And despite their poor recent away form, I'm going to go for a 1-0 win for Burnley. I think it will be tight. The third game is one that promises to be a pretty entertaining affair and probably the one I'll watch on Saturday lunchtime. It is Norwich City versus Hull City. Norwich off the back of that 4-1 and 3-2 victory in the last week. Got a creditable 1-1 draw against Leeds. We mentioned probably didn't create a great deal. The penalty was the only shot on target. But they're in decent form. They're always strong at home. If they can pick up odd results on the road, even if they're undeserved, like at Coventry and to an extent at Derby as well, they're now going to have a decent season and they're in that mix early on. As now a Hull City, who after a disastrous start have won 3 on the bounce, scored 10 in doing so, and only conceded 1 a game. They've shored up a little bit defensively, and they've certainly found form in front of goal. Some of those attacking players just starting to click. It was a bit of a weird match, because Hull definitely had the best chances of the game against QPR in midweek, but he still gave up over 20 shots, and it is my concern about Hull. A more ruthless Stoke side, that game we watched a couple of weeks ago on stream, Stoke would have been out of sight at half-time if they're a more ruthless team. They've still got mistakes in them at the back, but the one thing I will say is they're entertaining now. And this is what I expected when Tim Walter came in. A team that would be on the front foot, wouldn't mind giving away a goal if they had a chance to score 2. And as that attack clicks, we're going to get a very entertaining season out of Hull City. On this occasion, I do think they'll come up short. I know they've won their last 2 away games 3-1, but Norwich at home generally have a very good record. Even last season under Wagner, they were remarkable at home. So I'm going to go for Norwich to win. I'm going to go for goals. I'm going to go for entertainment. The high press for Norwich will work. Hull might get in on the counter. I'm going to go for Norwich City to win handsomely by 3-1. And the final early kickoff has become a huge game for Portsmouth, who need to bounce back at home to fellow promoted side Oxford United. We'll come to Oxford in a minute, because obviously I saw them in the flesh on Tuesday. But what on earth happened to Pompey? What did we say in the midweek video? The season starts here. You've played all those promotion favourites. Now you've got a winnable game against an out-of-form side with a new manager where it's just not clicked yet. And then you go and produce that. I mean, let's be fair. Literally everything Stoke hit went in the top corner. So there are a few mitigating circumstances. But a couple of the goals they gave away were poor playing out from the back. The penalty was incredibly harsh in my view. But they did shoot themselves in the foot plenty. That made no real impact on the game. The fact they conceded goals in clusters as well, always a worry when we talk about sides at the bottom over these seasons. And at home to an Oxford side who came up via the playoffs, who are revitalised and who are flying, it really is going to be a difficult match, because the one question we had about Oxford is, yes, they've been very solid, very tactically good at home. Can they add that attacking threat away from home? They ran Bristol City close, created some chances in that match, and against Luton again, albeit the style of play and some of the antics from Luton players that we'll get to later played into their hands. Oxford were fantastic. They had a threat throughout. I think I'm being fair in saying they should have won the game. It was very harsh on them that they didn't, but they didn't take their chances, and if it wasn't for a Belgian international goalkeeper, I think they would have been very comfortable winners with 3 points. I said it in the pre-season prediction video, and I'm really annoyed with myself now. I was never comfortable with putting Oxford to go down, but I didn't trust my instincts. They're going to stay up for me, but this game, I'm not sure they're going to win it. I think a big effort on Tuesday night on a horrid pitch and a horrid surface. Pompey have got to bounce back and react. I actually think both sides would probably take this result. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw, my first Championship's favourite scoreline of the day. As we move on to the 7 at 3 p.m. kickoffs, starting with Coventry City versus Sheffield Wednesday. after the slow start and 3 defeats in a row in all competition. There's the real Coventry City. Brilliant performance from them, really good effort. Goals from Haji Wright and Thomas Asante, some attacking stars starting to find form, and gave up a little bit of possession to Blackburn, forced them out and then sucker punched them. It was a brilliant tactical display, and it was a really good effort to see some of their strikers back in form. So it feels like a big moment, lift off for Coventry City. Whereas for Sheffield Wednesday, it's actually been a pretty good week, hasn't it? A 0-0 draw away at Bristol City in midweek. Not the best of games. They gave up a lot of the ball. There weren't many chances. I mean, you could argue if both teams took their great chance, it would have been one apiece. But there were 3 shots on target in the whole match. It wasn't the best of matches. But Sheffield Wednesday, after beating West Brom on Saturday, after dealing with that setback, losing the 2-goal lead and going and nicking it late, I think that's really important. 4 points out of the week. They've moved themselves back into that mid-table cluster on 8 points. And this one could be the moment for them to really push on up the table. Both sides will be looking at this and thinking, we win, we're back within a few points of the playoffs going into the October break. For Coventry, home advantage should be important. I know they had that poor result against Swansea, but they create chances. My worry is that they do give up a few chances on the break, and Sheffield Wednesday have got the players to hurt them there. However, they have put in a few poor away displays this year. I don't think Coventry will be as toothless as Bristol City. They'll play forward a bit more quickly. So as a result, I'm going to go for Coventry City to nick it, but not as comfortably as midweek. I'm going to go for 2-1. Let's move on to another big game in the Midlands as Derby County face Queen's Park Rangers. For QPR, yet another slow start. Different season, different manager to the start of last year. Same old problems. Conceding goals, not taking their chances. A 3-1 defeat at home to Hull City was a real kick in the teeth because we mentioned they were second best against Millwall. We mentioned they snatched one right at the death against Wednesday. They were poor away at Blackburn and they had 10 men for half a game. But in this one in midweek, they were really, really poor. I know they had 20 shots, but they didn't create many glorious chances. Hull definitely had the best chances of the match. They made the most of set pieces, and QPR, they look a bit toothless at the minute. So hopefully for their sake, it's just a slow start rather than a poor season. There were encouraging signs towards the end last year under Cifuentes, but it's just not happening for them at the minute. For Derby, a few concerns because after that positive start, it is 3 defeats in a row. We do need to bear in mind, though, that Sunderland are top of the table and Norwich and Sheffield United were either in the top 6 of the Championship or in the Premier League last year. So let's not get too overexcited about those games. They've just had a little poor run. This is the one where they've got to make it count. They've picked up really good home wins this season. They've been fantastic at home, in fact. You saw against Cardiff and Bristol City, really solid defensively, putting their bodies on the line. And against Norwich, I mean, nearly all of the goals shouldn't have counted. So it was a very different match to what it was perceived to be from the scoreline. For this one, I'm going to go back to the tried and trusted. I fancy Derby to nick a goal. I fancy them to be solid at the back. I'm going to go for Derby for the 3rd time this year to win by 1-0 at Pride Park. Let's go down south now as we head to Plymouth Argyle at home park. They host Blackburn Rovers, and home comforts is very much what Plymouth are looking for. 3-1 victory at home to Luton, 3-2 victory at home to Sunderland, and 2 successive 1-0 defeats on the road against good sides in West Brom and Burnley. You've got to be fair here because everyone derided the Wayne Rooney appointment. Look at the comments on our manager special for it. We thought they were going to be one of the poorer sides, and look, they're right down there still, but they've been far more competitive and far more tactically competent than any of us expected. So credit where it's due to Plymouth. They look a real threat at home. They were excellent against Luton last Friday. And against Burnley in midweek, I know they didn't create anything, but they didn't give up a huge amount, which surprised me to an extent. For Blackburn, 3 clean sheets was followed by a very heavy defeat at Coventry City. Not the best of performances. And look, I mentioned it a bit. Blackburn weren't going to stay up there this year. I know a few people in the comments were talking about it the last week or so. It was a great start, but that's all it is. A bit like a couple of years ago when John Eustace was at Birmingham, had a similar sort of season where they were very good at home. They were able to get results, but on the road, they just got pegged back a little bit and they found ways to lose quite comfortably. I think this might be a season where that starts to happen. I think Plymouth are going to give them a game. I can see this being a goal fest, to be honest. I know Blackburn have only scored in one of their last 3, same for Plymouth. But at home, Plymouth have a real threat and they go for it more, which will suit the way Blackburn play as well, with the likes of Ahashi, Gahey on the break, Hedges and Dolan as well. There's so much pace in there. I almost think it suits both sides to play on the counter-attack, and as a result, we might get a more entertaining game. I think both teams will score. I think both teams will be a threat. I'm going to sit on the fence a bit, but not the Championship's favourite scoreline. I'm going double. 2 apiece at home park. As we move on to the big one between two of the relegated sides, it is Sheffield United versus Luton Town. One I would very much like to watch behind the sofa if possible, because it hasn't been the best of starts for Luton. Again, chances being missed by strikers as we're looking for them to find form. Morris getting injured just as he scored two, a little bit of a disappointment. But the bigger concern for me is the chances they're giving up, because without Amari Bell in that back line, having lost Osho in the summer, there is a lack of pace back there. And when you're playing man for man on halfway, it just doesn't really work. The conditions made the game awful in the second half against Oxford, but to give up a 2-goal lead is not ideal. Luton didn't really do much to be 2 up, so it's not like they were dominating the game. But Oxford United absolutely battered Luton from the start of the second half, probably until the red card, to be honest. I'm just going to get it out the way now, because people will accuse me of bias otherwise. Liam Walsh, I don't know what he's doing. He's come on. He's made a horrendous tackle within 20 seconds, and it's a cowardly tackle. There's no way around it. I don't know him. I don't know what type of player he is. He's only been at the club a few weeks, but it really wasn't a good look. And thankfully, there was no lasting injury impact from it. Deserved red card and completely stupid. But in the end, it actually ended up helping Luton a bit, because they went into a more tactical shape, sat a little bit deeper. And with McGuinness and with Burt being the defenders remaining on, it suited them a little bit better. So didn't work out too badly in the end. However, Sheffield United are very much in form, and 5 clean sheets in succession. No mean feat at this level, by the way. Chris Wilder was doubted by a lot of people, but he's now got the only unbeaten side in the division. And maybe while there is a little bit of a concern that they're perhaps not gelling quite up front yet, they're not producing those dominant displays, they're not putting games to bed, they really look a good side. And in this game, look, Luton need the international break, get a couple of players back, build some more fitness, and then it's the big game against Watford. I don't hold up much hope for this one. I think Sheffield United have to go into it as favourites. I'm going to go for them to win this one by 2-0. Into the final third, as we head to the team that Sheffield United beat in midweek, it is Swansea City versus Stoke City. We'll talk about Swansea quickly first before we get onto the big performance of midweek. Didn't create an awful lot against Sheffield United, and it was one of those typical Swansea displays that we do criticise. They had 2/3 of the ball, created next to nothing in the match. They had one very good chance, but one shot on target, gave up more of the game to Sheffield United in key areas, and lost the ball in their own half a fair amount. So a little bit of a concerning display, but look, Swansea aren't going to be winning games away at Sheffield United. There isn't, I don't think, a promotion expectation there this year. They're doing a solid job. They're in the middle of the table, and I think that's where they're going to stay this year. And a bit of stability as they build an identity and a playing style, I think is absolutely fine. For Stoke City, where did that come from? 2 very worrying displays under Narcy Palak so far. And then, thanks to a few gifts and a bit of help from Portsmouth, they win 6-1 in midweek. I mean, the goals came in a flurry. Tom Cannon looked fantastic. A player Luton were linked with in the summer, ironically. A really good striker at this level and produced a really good performance. The question is now for Stoke, can they back it up away from home? We've seen those days from them this year. We saw the 5-0 under Schumacher away at Borough in the Cup. They have those odd games, but can they put it together regularly? The bigger concern as well, no clean sheet since the Plymouth game in August. They've been letting in goals and conceding chances since Palak's come in, but I think this will be a fairly tight game. Swansea, we know, are going to dominate the ball. Might suit Stoke playing a bit more on the counter-attack. I'm so tempted to go for 1-1. I know a lot of people will. I think it could be a quite low-scoring game, but Swansea at home have got a half-decent record, so I'm going to go for them to nick this game. Swansea by 2-1. I don't think the Stoke dream will last long. However, it could be the start of something, which is always the optimism you want as a fan. Into the final 3 as we head to Watford versus Middlesbrough. For Borough, a 1-0 win away at West Brom in midweek. A really important result, with Hackney popping up with another important goal. Restricted West Brom to a few chances, albeit good ones, but didn't give up too many opportunities. And unlike West Brom's usual form this season, they didn't take them, which offered Middlesbrough a chance. They had one great chance and scored it, but again, 15 shots, 1 goal. The conversion rate isn't great from Borough this year, but in a game between 2 top sides, they got a good result. And look, they're up in 7th place, 4 points off the top, which, given the fact they've lost a couple of games they shouldn't have and have not hit form in front of goal yet, I think Michael Carrick will be delighted with that start. For Watford, very good start. It hasn't really followed on, has it? Some difficult games last month. We said Sheffield United, Coventry, Norwich, no wins in them. Got a great result against Sunderland last weekend, doing okay at home in fairness to them. But then away to Preston, I want to say it was a really poor display. It wasn't, to be honest. It was a pretty even game early on. I mentioned they had that brilliant chance. I think it was Barr up front, wasn't it, who missed the opportunity. 1-on-1, just hit it straight down the middle at the keeper. It was a bit of a strange one. However, once they went behind, it was that worrying sign from Watford of, actually, we could cave in and let in 2 or 3 here, which is the thing that hadn't been happening under Tom Cleverley. But now against Norwich and Preston, 2 games where there wasn't a huge amount between the 2 teams. Then they give away those opportunities back to back to back. And again, start to concede clusters of goals, which is a concern. I think this will be a tight game. Borough, we've mentioned it, they don't take their chances too often. They don't concede many though. So I don't think Watford are going to run away with this one. I'm going to have to sit on the fence. The Championship's favourite scoreline, 1 apiece, but I wouldn't be shocked if it went 1-0 either way. And the final game on Saturday afternoon is West Bromwich Albion versus Millwall. We just mentioned West Brom, that disappointing defeat to Borough in midweek. Had a few good chances, but didn't constantly create, though they don't very often do that. It's been a really disappointing week after fighting back against Sheffield Wednesday, then giving away the late goal. I think they'll be a little bit disappointed. Not what we tend to expect from a Carlos Corberán side. We've got to bear in mind prior to that, 3 wins and 3 clean sheets. And they beat the sides that they generally expect to beat, particularly at home. And Millwall would probably fall into that category. Again, they've had a couple of great home performances recently. But it's not quite been the same on the roads. They had that 1-1 draw at QPR where you could argue they should have won. But they've got to be disappointed with what happened at Cardiff in midweek. Because Cardiff are a side that have been basically the whipping boys this season. They've been so poor defensively. They've not looked like scoring. And actually, they gave up a few chances to them. Didn't really create bundles. It was an even game, which for Millwall will be disappointing. So a 1-0 defeat for them there. A pretty poor week for both of them based on that. But Millwall away from home are not quite the same proposition. And defensively, we've mentioned, they've not been quite as solid this year. So I'm going to go for a Carlos Corberán special. We're going to go back to last year this time, though. We've had a couple of 1-0s at home this season. This time I'm going back for 2. 2-0 at the Hawthorns for West Brom. The old special from last season that served us so well. And then the final game on Sunday afternoon is Bristol City versus Cardiff City. Another big game for Bristol City after a couple of draws and 3 games without a defeat. Wasn't the best performance against Sheffield Wednesday, but they got a point, they hung in there, and a first clean sheet of the season. I often accuse Bristol City of conceding late goals, of giving away too many chances in the second half. And to be fair to them, they stayed in the game when they weren't at their best. So I've got to give them a bit of credit for that. 5 points in the week isn't the worst, but I think what we've seen again so far this year is that Bristol City are going to be mid-table and nowhere above, nowhere below. The usual service. For Cardiff, my word, did they need that win. Still managerless, but against Millwall, a crucial 1-0, a clean sheet, which after the goals they'd been conceding the games prior will be massively appreciated at the club. But still not a massive goal threat, still not creating loads of chances. And Bristol City have been far better at home than away this year. So I don't think we can say anything other than a home win. There's a chance that Cardiff pick up some form. Of course, the manager situation will be ongoing. But I'm going to go for Bristol City to nick the last game of the weekend. We'll go into the international break on Sunday afternoon with a 2-1 victory for the Robins at home against the Bluebirds. So with that out of the way, let's have a quick recap of what I've gone for this weekend. I've only predicted one team to score 3, scarred a little bit by midweek. I've gone for Norwich City to win 3-1 at home to inform Hull. Maybe a little bit of a surprise. I've also gone for the league leaders to lose on Friday night narrowly to Leeds United. Most Sunderland fans like it when I do that because they normally win when I predict a loss. And Derby to nick a big one against QPR, while Pompey and Oxford, the battle of the promoted sides, for me, will finish 1 apiece. One of 2 Championship's favourite scorelines I've gone for this weekend. But those are just my predictions for match week 9. Do you agree or disagree? Let me know in the comments below. Give me your predictions for all 12 matches. And if you beat or match my overall score, you'll get a shout out in the first recap after the international break. In the meantime, I'm sure we'll have a Cardiff manager special. And if you're a Football Manager fan, you can find a link in the description to pre-order. I've got a discount affiliate code. It does help support the channel and also gets you a bit of money off if it's a game you play anyway. So check out that for Football Manager 2025. Another quick plug as well to say we've got a partnership with Amazon this month. You can find our affiliate link in the description. Over the Prime Day events, if you shop anything over the website, just go via that link. And again, it helps support the channel. Makes no difference to the prices you pay. Thank you so much for watching as always. Give me your predictions in the comments. and let me know if you're confident for your game this weekend. I'll see you back here in a couple of weeks' time as we return to Championship action. I'm going to have to be confident for Luton v Watford. That will depend massively on what happens this weekend. I'll see you there.